And I squeezed and he's like, you choking me. And I said, I know I'm choking you. Who am I? You're the world champion. You're damn right I'm the world champion. You can breathe now.
Mark Henry is a man who survived racism, hazing, and betrayal to become one of the most respected voices in professional wrestling. But respect does not mean forgiveness. And when it comes to Hulk Hogan, the so-called icon of the industry, Mark Henry has drawn a line in the sand. Hogan is a racist. He used the N-word. He mocked the idea of his daughter dating a black man. And when WWE gave him a chance to apologize, he told the locker room to be careful with cameras instead of showing real remorse. That is not forgiveness material. That is a stain. And it is just one name on a list of 10 wrestlers Mark Henry will never forgive. Mark Henry debuted in 1996 as an Olympic powerlifter with zero wrestling experience. He was signed to a 10-year guaranteed contract that made him rich before he ever stepped in the ring. That contract also made him a target. The locker room in the 1990s was not a safe place. It was a wild west of hazing, pranks, and power games. And at the top of that food chain sat a group called the Kliq: Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Triple H, and X-Pac. These 5 men controlled everything. They decided who got TV time. They decided who got buried. And they decided that Mark Henry, the overpaid rookie, needed to be broken. The culture of professional wrestling in the mid-1990s was brutal. Veterans hazed newcomers as a rite of passage. But what Mark Henry experienced went far beyond tradition. It was systematic torture designed to drive him out of the business. The men who inflicted this abuse were not random bullies. They were the top stars of the company. They had power. They had influence. And they used both to make Mark Henry's life a living hell. Number 10 on Mark Henry's list of unforgiven wrestlers is the Kliq as a collective entity. They did not just rib Mark Henry. They tried to destroy him. Ribs are supposed to be funny. What the Kliq did was psychological warfare. They hid his crutches when he was injured. They mocked him in front of the entire roster. They spread rumors. They made sure he felt like an outsider every single day, and it worked. Mark Henry, the world's strongest man, was reduced to a humiliated shell of himself. He did not know the politics. He did not know the rules. He just knew he was being tortured. The Kliq operated as a gang. They protected each other. They punished anyone who threatened their spot, and they did it with the full support of the company. The Kliq buried talent. They sabotaged storylines. They made life miserable for anyone outside their circle. Mark Henry was not the only victim, but he was one of the most vulnerable. He had no experience. He had no political power. He had only his strength, and strength does not matter when 5 men are conspiring against you. The Kliq's legacy is toxic. Industry insiders call them cancerous. They infected the locker room with cruelty and ego. And while some members, like Triple H, have apologized and evolved, the faction as a whole represents the worst of wrestling's old guard. Mark Henry condemns the culture they created. He survived it, but he will never forgive the years they stole from him, the humiliation they inflicted, the pain they caused. The Kliq is unforgivable because they did not just hurt Mark Henry. They hurt the entire industry. The faction mentality made everything worse. When one member of the Kliq had a problem with someone, they all did. It was 5 against 1, always. And Mark Henry stood alone. He had no allies. He had no protection. He was a rookie in a world where rookies got eaten alive. The Kliq made sure of that. They wanted him gone, and they almost succeeded. Number 9 is Shawn Michaels, the general of the Kliq. Shawn Michaels was the leader. He was also in the middle of a drug-fueled ego trip that made him one of the most hated men backstage. Michaels was talented. No one denies that. But talent does not excuse cruelty. And Michaels was cruel to Mark Henry. The most infamous incident involved Henry's crutches. Mark had a serious ankle injury. He needed those crutches to walk. Someone hid them. Mark was stranded, helpless, a 400-pound man who could not move, and everyone laughed. Mark Henry believed it was Shawn Michaels who did it. He had every reason to believe that. Michaels was the ringleader. He set the tone, and the tone was vicious. Mark Henry snapped. He told people he was going to kill Shawn Michaels and the entire Kliq. This was not a wrestling promo. This was a real threat from a man who could actually do it. Mark Henry could bench press a car. He could crush a human skull, and he was done being humiliated. Vince McMahon took the threat seriously. He sent Mark Henry to Canada for 9 months to train with the Hart family, to cool off, to survive. The exile to Canada was devastating for Mark Henry's career. He lost 9 months of development, 9 months of television time, 9 months of building his character, all because Shawn Michaels and the Kliq created such a hostile environment that Mark Henry became dangerous. The company chose to protect Michaels. They chose to remove Henry. That decision sent a clear message. Stars matter more than rookies. Politics matter more than justice. Years later, Mark Henry found out it was not Shawn Michaels who hid the crutches. It was Paul Bearer, the manager. But the damage was already done. Michaels created the culture where hiding a crippled man's crutches seemed acceptable. He fostered the cruelty, he enabled the torture, and when Michaels finally apologized decades later, he admitted he was in a bad place. Mark Henry accepted that apology. He values repentance. But acceptance does not mean forgetting. The scar remains. Shawn Michaels is on the list because he made Mark Henry's early career a living nightmare. The apology from Michaels matters. It shows growth, it shows remorse, and Mark Henry respects that, but it does not erase history. The years of abuse still happened. The exile still happened. The humiliation still happened. Michaels may have changed, but the damage he caused is permanent. That is why forgiveness is complicated. You can accept an apology without forgetting the crime. Number 8 is X-Pac, the foot soldier of the Kliq. If Shawn Michaels was the general, Sean Waltman was the enforcer. And X-Pac took things further than anyone. He committed one of the most disgusting acts in wrestling history, the shit sandwich incident. According to multiple sources, including X-Pac himself, someone placed human feces inside a sandwich meant for Mark Henry. Some versions say it was a Subway sandwich. Some say Mark took a bite. Some say he discovered it in time. But the core fact remains: someone weaponized human waste against a coworker. This was not a rib. This was a biohazard. This was dehumanization. In any other workplace, this would be a firing offense. In wrestling, it was Tuesday. Mark Henry was the target because he was big, gentle, and new. He was not going to fight back, except he did. Mark Henry eventually retaliated in the ring. He threw X-Pac around like a teddy bear. X-Pac himself admitted he could not dent Mark Henry. He was terrified of the power. But the damage to Mark's dignity was already done. X-Pac is on the list because he violated basic human decency, and no amount of time can erase that. The shit sandwich incident represents everything wrong with wrestling culture in the 1990s. It was cruel, it was disgusting, it was dangerous, and it was allowed. The company did nothing. Management did nothing. The locker room laughed. And Mark Henry had to endure it. He had to smile. He had to pretend it was fine. Because speaking up meant ending his career. That is the price rookies paid. And X-Pac collected that price with glee. Today, X-Pac and Mark Henry are reportedly cordial. They have moved past the immaturity of their youth. But moving past something does not mean it never happened. The shit sandwich is part of wrestling history now. It is part of Mark Henry's story. And it is part of X-Pac's legacy. You cannot separate the man from his actions. And X-Pac's actions were unforgivable at the time, even if they have been forgiven since. Number 7 is Ahmed Johnson, and this represents a different kind of threat. This is not psychological warfare. This is physical danger. Mark Henry has publicly accused Ahmed Johnson of attempting to drug him. According to Henry, he was at a bar or restaurant when he saw Johnson tampering with his drink or food. Mark stopped himself before consuming it, but the intent was clear. Ahmed Johnson tried to poison a colleague. That is not a rib. That is a felony. In professional wrestling, your body is your career. Wrestlers are tested for drugs. They rely on their faculties to perform safely. To drug someone is to sabotage their livelihood and their life. Mark Henry has said he would never forgive himself for committing a felony. The implication is clear. If he had retaliated physically, Ahmed Johnson would be dead and Mark Henry would be in prison. Ahmed Johnson is unforgivable because he crossed a legal and moral line. He was not just dangerous in the ring, he was dangerous to human life. Ahmed Johnson was also widely regarded as an unsafe worker. Booker T and others have confirmed this. Wrestling is built on trust. You place your body in someone else's hands. You trust they will protect you. Ahmed Johnson did not protect people. He hurt them. He was reckless. He was unskilled. And he endangered lives. For Mark Henry, who prides himself on being safe and professional, Ahmed Johnson is the antithesis of everything wrestling should be. Bruce Pritchard, a longtime WWE executive, admitted that Ahmed Johnson had all the charisma in the world. He had the look. He had the personality. But he did not have the feel. He was dangerous in the ring. And that made him a liability. The company wanted to make him WWE champion. But they could not trust him with that responsibility because championships mean main events. And main events mean protecting your opponent. Ahmed Johnson could not do that. The drugging allegation elevates this beyond normal wrestling beef. This is criminal behavior. This is attempted assault. And Mark Henry has never wavered from his story. He saw what he saw. He knows what happened. And he has chosen not to pursue legal action because he values his freedom more than revenge. But that does not mean he is forgiven. Ahmed Johnson remains on the list because some lines cannot be uncrossed. Number 6 is JBL, a special kind of bully. John Bradshaw Layfield was not just mean. He was systematic. He targeted the weak. He targeted the different. He targeted anyone he thought could not fight back. And he did it for years. Mark Henry has admitted he was a victim of JBL's worst joke. He does not always go into detail. JBL, but he has grouped it with JBL's treatment of Mauro Ranallo, the Blue Meanie, and The Miz. JBL made the locker room a hostile work environment, and he got away with it. Mark Henry was a target because of his gentle nature. The sexual chocolate gimmick made him seem soft. JBL saw weakness. He exploited it. He played cruel jokes. He humiliated Mark Henry repeatedly, and for years Mark had to endure it because speaking up could end his career. JBL burned bridges with everyone. He was despised, but he was protected because he made money for the company. That is the wrestling industry in a nutshell. Profit over people. JBL's bullying was legendary. He hazed The Miz so badly that Miz was forced to change in public bathrooms for months. He punched the Blue Meanie in the face during a legitimate brawl. He drove Mauro Ranallo out of the company with relentless verbal abuse. And these are just the public stories. The private stories are worse. JBL created a culture of fear, and Mark Henry lived in that culture for years. Eventually, Mark Henry grew into his silverback role. He stood up to JBL. He used his superior strength to shut down the bullying. Today, they coexist as WWE legends. They appear together on podcasts. Mark even defends Vince McMahon alongside JBL in recent controversies. But that does not erase history. JBL is on the list because his cruelty was unnecessary. His bullying was relentless, and his behavior represents everything wrong with the old locker room culture. The relationship between Mark Henry and JBL today is complex. They are cordial. They are professional. But cordiality is not friendship, and professionalism is not forgiveness. Mark Henry understands that holding grudges forever is exhausting. He understands that the business requires coexistence, but understanding does not mean forgetting. JBL hurt him, JBL hurt others, and that history cannot be rewritten. Number 5 is Jim Cornette, and this represents the ideological divide in wrestling. Cornette is old school. He values tradition, he values kayfabe, he values technical wrestling, and he despises the modern product. Mark Henry worked under Cornette in Ohio Valley Wrestling, WWE's developmental territory. Cornette was critical of Henry. He saw Mark as a project signed for his look, not his talent, and he was not shy about saying it. Cornette criticized the world's strongest man gimmick. He criticized Mark's in-ring work. He dismissed Mark's potential. And for someone like Mark Henry, who worked harder than almost anyone to improve, that criticism stung. Mark Henry's Hall of Pain run in 2011 proved Cornette wrong. Mark became a dominant force, a credible world champion, a top-tier performer. But Cornette never acknowledged that growth. He just kept criticizing. Today, Cornette runs a podcast where he ruthlessly attacks modern wrestlers. Many of those wrestlers are people Mark Henry mentors. Mark sees Cornette's brand of criticism as toxic. It tears down talent for clicks. It does not build, it destroys. And while Cornette's grievance with Mark is not as traumatic as the X-Pac sandwich or the Ahmed Johnson drugging, it is sustained, it is ongoing, and it is disrespectful. Jim Cornette is unforgivable because he represents the gatekeepers who tried to keep Mark Henry down. Cornette believes he is protecting wrestling. He believes his criticism is constructive, but Mark Henry sees it differently. He sees a bitter old man tearing down the next generation. He sees someone who cannot adapt to change. He sees someone who would rather destroy than build, and that makes Cornette dangerous. Not physically dangerous, but dangerous to morale, dangerous to confidence, dangerous to the future of the business. The ideological divide between old school and new school is real, and it matters. Mark Henry respects tradition, he values the history of wrestling, but he also understands that the business must evolve. Cornette refuses to evolve. He refuses to accept that wrestling can be different and still be good, and that refusal makes him an obstacle. Mark Henry has no patience for obstacles, especially obstacles that hurt the people he mentors. Number 4 is Ryback, and this is about respect for the business. Ryback, real name Ryan Reeves, left WWE and became a vocal critic of the industry. He called wrestling titles fake props. He said wins and losses do not matter. He dismissed the entire structure of the business, and Mark Henry took extreme offense. For Mark, the World Heavyweight Championship is sacred. It represents sacrifice. It represents years of destroyed joints and broken bones. It represents everything he fought for. Mark Henry went on Busted Open Radio and destroyed Ryback. He called him a cancer to the locker room. He said Ryback owes the wrestling industry an apology. He dismantled Ryback's reputation point by point. Mark argued that Ryback's attitude was an insult to every wrestler who suffered for those fake props. And he was right. Wrestling is built on the illusion of competition. If you mock that illusion, you mock the business itself. Ryback's comments were not just offensive, they were dangerous. Young wrestlers listen to veterans. If a veteran says titles do not matter, young wrestlers might believe it. They might stop caring. They might stop trying. And when wrestlers stop caring, the product suffers, the fans suffer, the business suffers. Mark Henry understands this. Ryback does not. Or worse, Ryback does not care. Ryback's grievance is unforgivable in a professional sense. He disrespected the industry that made him. He disrespected the veterans who paved the way. He disrespected the titles that gave his career meaning. Until Ryback apologizes, Mark Henry considers him an enemy of wrestling. This is not personal. This is about protecting the business. And Mark Henry is the silverback now. He enforces the code. Ryback broke the code, and he will not be forgiven. The cancer comparison is harsh, but it is accurate. Cancer spreads. It infects healthy tissue. It destroys from within. Ryback's attitude is cancerous. It spreads negativity. It infects young minds. It destroys the passion that makes wrestling great. Mark Henry will not tolerate that. He has seen too many people sacrifice too much to let someone like Ryback tear it all down. Number 3 is Lio Rush, and this represents a broken mentorship. Mark Henry saw potential in Rush. He saw a talented young black wrestler who needed guidance, and he tried to help. But Rush made a critical mistake. He lied. Rush publicly complained about not being paid enough. He said he could not afford rental cars and hotels. Mark Henry pulled him aside and asked if he was truly struggling. Rush looked him in the eye and said everything was fine. But then he kept complaining publicly. Mark Henry felt betrayed. He offered help. He offered mentorship, and Rush lied to his face. The situation escalated when Rush implied that Mark's advice was racially insensitive. He suggested Mark was acting like an Uncle Tom, forcing him to accept mistreatment. That accusation enraged Mark Henry. He threatened to sue Rush for defamation. The idea that Mark Henry, a black man who survived the Kliq's racism and Hulk Hogan's hatred, would betray his own people was unbearable. The Uncle Tom accusation was a bridge too far. Mark Henry has spent his entire career fighting for respect, fighting for dignity, fighting for equality. To be accused of betraying his race by someone he was trying to help was devastating. It was insulting. It was wrong. And Mark Henry refused to let it stand. He was prepared to take legal action. He was prepared to defend his name in court. Eventually, Mark and Lio reconciled. They agreed to be super cordial. They attributed the conflict to two strong personalities from different eras. But the damage was done. Lio Rush is on the list because he rejected mentorship. He lied, and he accused Mark of betrayal. In Mark Henry's world, lying to a mentor is unforgivable. Lio earned his way off the list through reconciliation. But the lesson remains. Respect the veterans, tell the truth, or face the consequences. The reconciliation shows Mark Henry's capacity for growth. He could have held the grudge forever. He could have refused to forgive. But he chose dialogue. He chose understanding. He chose peace. That does not erase what Lio Rush did, but it shows that Mark Henry is not a monster. He is a man with principles. And when those principles are respected, forgiveness is possible. Number 2 is Kyrie Sane, the most controversial name on the list. And the grievance is recent. Around WrestleMania 40 in April 2024, Kyrie Sane was involved in a match with Damage Cottrell. During the entrance of Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, and Naomi, Sane remained in the ring for approximately 7 seconds. In Mark Henry's view, that was a violation. She was stealing the spotlight. She was failing to clear the ring. She was disrespecting the business. Mark Henry criticized Sane harshly on Busted Open Radio. He said she disrespected the business. He said in his day, he would have taken her head off for such an infraction. When fans defended Sane, arguing that 7 seconds is nothing, Mark doubled down. He dismissed the critics as Gen Z people who are just fans. He said they are not Hall of Famers. He said they do not understand the business. And he refused to back down. This grievance reveals Mark Henry's zero-tolerance policy. He is the silverback. He enforces the rules. And in his mind, even a 7-second violation matters. It does not matter if the audience did not notice. It does not matter if it seems minor. The rules are the rules, and Kyrie Sane broke them. She is on the list not because of a personal attack, but because she violated the code Mark Henry is sworn to uphold. The controversy around the Kyrie Sane criticism is significant. Other wrestlers, like Dakota Kai, defended Sane. They said she loves and respects the business. Fans accused Mark Henry of being out of touch. They said he is too rigid, too old school, too stuck in his ways. And maybe they are right, but Mark Henry does not care. He is not here to be popular. He is here to protect the business. The generational divide is real. Younger fans do not understand the unwritten rules. They do not understand why 7 seconds matters. They see it as harmless. Mark Henry sees it as the first crack in the foundation. If you allow 7 seconds today, you allow 10 seconds tomorrow, and eventually the entire structure collapses. That is why he is so strict. That is why he refuses to compromise. The business is bigger than any individual. Number 1 is Hulk Hogan, the most important name on this list. Not because of wrestling ability, not because of backstage politics, but because of racism. In 2015, audio recordings were leaked of Hulk Hogan using the N-word. Hogan expressed disgust at his daughter dating a black man. He said vile things, and WWE cut ties immediately. Hogan was removed from the Hall of Fame. His merchandise was pulled. He was erased. And for 3 years, that was justice. But in 2018, WWE decided to bring Hogan back, and Mark Henry became the voice of the black locker room. He said Hogan could return under one condition: a sincere apology, face-to-face, heart-to-heart. Mark Henry was willing to help Hogan find redemption. He was willing to facilitate healing. But Hogan had to earn it. He had to show real remorse. He had to prove his heart was in the right place. And when the moment came, Hogan failed. Hogan addressed the locker room, but instead of apologizing for his racism, he warned them about cameras and microphones. He told them to be careful, as if the problem was getting caught, not the hatred itself. Mark Henry was devastated. He expected contrition. He got damage control. Hogan admitted to being a little racist, as if racism comes in degrees, as if a little racism is acceptable. It is not, and Mark Henry knows it. The failure of the apology is what makes this unforgivable. Mark Henry gave Hogan a chance. He extended an olive branch. He offered a path to redemption, and Hogan rejected it, not explicitly, but through his actions, through his words, through his refusal to truly own his hatred. That rejection is permanent. It cannot be undone, and it cannot be forgiven. Mark Henry has said that some people will never be forgiven, even if they open a hospital wing. The act of charity does not erase the sin of hatred. Hulk Hogan never properly apologized, and that haunts his legacy to this day. When Hogan was booed at WWE Raw's Netflix debut in 2025, Mark Henry was not surprised. He said Hogan never wanted to fix things. He just wanted to move on. But you cannot move on from racism without repentance. And Hogan never repented. The booing at the Netflix debut was justice. It was the fans holding Hogan accountable. It was the audience refusing to forget, and Mark Henry supported it. He understands that forgiveness must be earned, and Hogan has not earned it. He has not done the work. He has not shown the growth. He has not proven he has changed. Until he does, the boos will continue, and they should. Mark Henry separates the man from the legacy. He acknowledges that Hogan's place on wrestling's Mount Rushmore is concrete. Hogan made wrestling global. He drew millions of fans. He changed the industry. But that does not excuse his racism. Mark Henry refuses to let Hogan's stardom erase his hatred, and he refuses to let Hogan's hatred erase his contributions. It is a nuanced position, but it is the right one. Hulk Hogan is unforgivable because he was given a chance to heal, and he chose pride over repentance. The separation of art and artist is important. Hogan the performer is a legend. Hogan the man is a racist. Both things can be true, and both things matter. Mark Henry understands this better than most. He lived through the racism, he survived it, and he refuses to pretend it did not happen just because Hogan is famous. Mark Henry's list of 10 unforgivable wrestlers is a roadmap of wrestling's darkest eras. It begins in the 1990s with the Kliq's systematic abuse and moves through Ahmed Johnson's felony-level drugging attempt. It confronts JBL's relentless bullying and Jim Cornette's dismissive gatekeeping. It challenges Ryback's disrespect and Lio Rush's lies. It enforces standards through Kyrie Sane's brief infraction, and it draws the ultimate moral line through Hulk Hogan's unrepentant racism. But the list is not just about grudges, it is about standards. Mark Henry survived unimaginable abuse to reach the Hall of Fame. He was hazed, he was humiliated, he was drugged, he was bullied, he was targeted by racists, and he endured. But enduring does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean forgiving those who never earned forgiveness. Mark Henry has the capacity for mercy. He accepted Shawn Michaels' apology. He reconciled with Lio Rush. But he also has boundaries. Those boundaries are what make him the silverback. He is the locker room enforcer now. He is the moral authority, and he will not tolerate disrespect. Whether it is Ryback mocking titles, Kyrie Sane staying in the ring too long, or Hulk Hogan refusing to truly repent, Mark Henry will call it out. He will name names. He will draw lines, and he will protect the business he loves. The Hall of Pain is not just a gimmick. It is a standard. It is the price of entry into Mark Henry's good graces. And for 10 wrestlers, that price was too high. They crossed lines they could not uncross. They committed acts they could not undo. And they will live forever on the list of people Mark Henry will never forgive. That is not cruelty. That is accountability. And in an industry built on lies and illusions, accountability is the rarest thing of all. Mark Henry's journey from victim to enforcer is the story of wrestling itself. The industry has evolved. It has improved. But the scars remain, the memories remain, and the lessons remain. Mark Henry carries those lessons with him every day. He uses them to mentor the next generation. He uses them to protect the vulnerable. He uses them to demand better from everyone. The 10 wrestlers on this list represent 10 different failures. The failure to show humanity, the failure to show respect, respect the failure to show remorse. And Mark Henry will not forget those failures, because forgetting means repeating, and repeating means more victims, more pain, more scars. Mark Henry refuses to allow that. He is the silverback, and the silverback protects the herd.